All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the chilling source material behind one of the absolute most baffling unsolved mysteries in American history. We are looking at a case that completely defies logic, science, and every standard investigation protocol. And the craziest part? It's a story not about monsters or ghosts, but about entirely ordinary people. Let's get right into it. Okay, just picture this. You wake up one morning to find an entire town vanished without a single trace, leaving only this haunting scene behind. They weren't destroyed by a storm, they weren't evacuated because of some looming natural disaster, just gone. As our sources describe it, houses were still standing, cars were still parked neatly in their driveways, and breakfast was literally left unfinished on kitchen tables. But the people? Absolutely nowhere to be found. Section 1. An ordinary town before the event. To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this mystery, we have to start with Ashwood's baseline. We're talking about a tight-knit place of fewer than 2,000 residents, where life followed a very comfortable, steady rhythm. To outsiders, Ashwood looked like the absolute perfect small town. It was the kind of place where, everyone knew each other, the local diners were always busy, kids played outside until sunset, and crime? It was almost entirely unheard of. People went to work, raised their families. Absolutely nothing suggested it would become the center of such a massive mystery. But then, a few weeks before the vanishing, that predictability started to crack. Residents started reporting these really strange anomalies. One person claimed they heard a low humming sound late at night coming from the nearby forest. Another reported seeing bright lights moving silently across the sky. At first, most people just laughed it off as overactive imaginations because, strange stories are super common in small towns. But these dismissed anomalies left this unexplained sense of unease, and a deep curiosity really began spreading through the community. Section 2. The night it changed. A normal evening. This is where the records become incredibly eerie simply because of how utterly normal they are. The final hours were completely mundane. In the evening, families ate dinner together. Local businesses closed their doors for the night. Moving into the late evening, the final phone calls made sounded completely ordinary. Parents reminding kids about school, friends making weekend plans. Life was moving forward exactly as it always had, right up until midnight struck. And then, sometime after midnight, something happens. And to this day, nobody knows what. Section 3. Morning Discovery. Unnerving silence. The next morning, the reality of what happened, or rather didn't happen, begins to unfold as delivery drivers roll up to Ashwood. As they went further into town, the roads were totally empty. Stores were wide open, but completely unattended. Front doors were just standing unlocked. You could hear a few televisions still playing inside empty homes. Dogs were wandering the streets without their owners. The town was a literal ghost town, completely frozen in the middle of a morning routine, with 0 people in sight. Section 4. Investigation yields nothing. Obviously, concern quickly turns into severe alarm. Authorities are contacted immediately, but their investigation hits a massive, baffling dead end. The physical evidence, or the total lack of it, was just bizarre. Step 1. They find 0 signs of violence anywhere. Step 2. Absolutely no evidence of a natural disaster. Step 3, no indication that anyone had packed their bags and fled. Clothes remained perfectly hung in closets, family photos were still on the walls, cars sat completely untouched, the homes looked as if the owners had just stepped outside for a split second and simply never returned. With the immediate town giving up 0 clues, the search efforts escalate rapidly. Investigators had to cast a massive net, expanding across the entire region. Nearby forests were combed meticulously, and rivers and lakes were examined top to bottom. The scale of this search grew incredibly massive. They had helicopters surveying the surrounding landscape from above, looking for literally any sign of movement or disruption. Down on the ground, hundreds of dedicated volunteers joined the search, scouring the region for any trace of the nearly 2,000 missing people. But despite all that frantic, coordinated effort, the result was just a crushing void. Nothing. Days passed, then days turned into weeks. And still, absolutely 0 answers emerged to explain what happened that night. Section 5. Leading theories, making sense of it. As news spread, the media obviously descended on Ashwood. Let's look at the 3 main theories that emerged from experts trying to explain this completely unprecedented vanishing. The first theory suggests the residents engaged in a voluntary departure. But honestly, that falls apart immediately. Investigators found no supporting evidence whatsoever. No transportation logs, no financial paper trails, and not a single farewell message left behind explaining where they had gone. The second theory points to a secret government operation. People often tied this back to those strange lights and humming sounds reported weeks earlier. Supporters argued classified activities might have occurred near the town. But, as our sources strongly emphasize, absolutely no evidence has ever confirmed these claims or linked the government to the disappearance. The final leading theory is mass panic, the idea that a rumor or threat spread like wildfire through the community, causing everyone to suddenly flee. But that raises a massive logical question, right? If 2,000 people suddenly fled in terror, how was there not a single trace of a coordinated evacuation discovered? Where did they go, and how did they travel without leaving a single footprint? Section 6, a final clue, a bizarre twist. Just when public interest finally began to fade away, a late-stage discovery reignited the entire case all over again. Several years later, a survey team working deep in a remote, completely isolated section of the forest near Ashwood stumbled upon a heartbreaking discovery. Scattered across a large area was this collection of deeply personal belongings from the former residents. We're talking old photographs, children's toys, pieces of clothing, and precious family keepsakes. But the crucial point here, the detail that makes this whole thing so deeply unsettling, is what investigators didn't find when they rushed to the scene. There was no campsite. There were no signs of survival or that anyone had been living in the area. It was as though these deeply personal objects had simply appeared out of nowhere, dropping into the forest and creating far more questions than answers. Section 7. Decades later, an unsolved mystery. That discovery definitely renewed public fascination, but ultimately it led nowhere. Today, despite exhaustive searches, documentaries, and endless debate, Ashwood remains entirely unsolved. No explanation has managed to account for every piece of evidence. No witness has ever come forward, which leaves us with the ultimate unsettling question derived directly from our source text. Where did those 2,000 people go? It really reminds us that sometimes the most terrifying stories aren't the ones about ghosts or monsters. They are the ones where ordinary people vanish without a trace. So I leave you with this to ponder. What happens when the truth simply vanishes alongside them?